The first verdicts in the police Operation Sanctuary. Let's go to Fiona Trott, who's covering that court case. Breaking news, Fiona.
Simon, let me tell you, there have been 2 years of trials here at Newcastle Crown Court, but now the final verdicts are in. So we can tell you all about the sexual exploitation that Northumbria police have uncovered in this city. Between 2010 and 2014, men predominantly of Pakistani, Bangladeshi and Indian origin targeted vulnerable girls and women. They invited them to parties, they gave them drink and drugs, so many drugs that many of those victims couldn't defend themselves, or they became so addicted that they would do anything to get more.
I'm sure we've all heard of all the plights and unfortunate attacks that have happened to all of our young girls that have happened in Rotherham, Newcastle and other similar places, where the fact is that people are still not expressing the true facts of case that are going about. But today we move over to Sweden. We move over to a country that is so entrenched in its form of diversity as strength that they will not even say that when a 12 to 13-year-old girl was raped, that it was rape. They will try to shift it to try and say that it was consensual sex. So today we're going to be talking about that, and we are going to be talking about the fact that this is happening in places in Sweden and happening in places all around the world, including in some of the aspects of our own town and our own problems, especially when it comes to places like Rotherham, where we have people that have come forward where the police have told them, well, what do you expect? Where in Rotherham as well, you also have a female child, unfortunately, that was raped from the age of 11 all the way up to the age of 16 to have 2 children with a particular bloke. And then because of that, they thought that it was all consensual, but yet that apparently was not consensual because, you know, for a start, statutory rape, and second of all, an 11-year-old can't really give fucking consent. So, with that being said, let's move into the actual realm of what we're talking about today, which is the aspect of what goes on when the actual court system themselves changes the law to actually be able to try and help these people and actually make it look like diversity is a strength. So, we start off by going to Finland, and in a Finnish court rules in my case that a migrant or a refugee, to be absolutely, completely and utterly honest and transparent with you, apparently had sex with a 10-year-old, but yet that sex that has been classified as a 10-year-old has been classified as a sexual assault, but will not be classified as a rape. So let's go down. This is from RT. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily like RT, but it is something that we do need to have a look at, and it will be a very poignant point for the reasons why we do what we do. In a case that has triggered public outrage, no shit, of course it would trigger public outrage. A top Finnish court has upheld a ruling that sex between an asylum seeker and a 10-year-old girl didn't constitute rape, because anywhere else it would at least be statutory rape, wouldn't it? Even if she was able to give some form of consent, which I will do this for argument's sake, but in general this is not what would happen. But let's, for the sake of argument, say that she was able to give consent. In the eyes of the law, in almost all the way around the world, especially in westernized countries, children cannot give consent, which means that at least because of that, it would be statutory rape, which would still constitute as a form of rape. But let's carry on, shall we? Critics are calling for harsher sentences for child abuse. This isn't child abuse, this is child rape. Let's get that fucking clear. So Finland's Supreme Court rejected a request from the prosecution to appeal a 3-year jail term for a 23-year-old man on Thursday. We will get through this, but this 20-year-old man at the time raped a 10-year-old girl at the time. A 10-year difference. This is not like a 14-year-old coming across and raping a 10-year-old. As bad as that fucking is, this is a full-grown man that should know goddamn better, or should I say should know Allah better, and has decided to rape a 10-year-old girl for some reason. Nobody knows why, or any sort of reasons because of that, but this is rape. But yet nobody in that country of Finland wants to talk about it. So Finnish media identify him as Jusif Mohammed Abading, an asylum seeker, but don't reveal his country of origin. One would probably have to suggest that it might be a country of Pakistani heritage, it might be an Iraqi heritage, or it might be an Afghanistani heritage. One doesn't know. One could also say that it is a Syrian heritage. Again, one does not know. So, let's carry on. The man was convicted of aggravated sexual abuse, although the prosecution had sought a harsher sentence of charges of aggravated rape. However, the court left the original verdict unchanged, which was aggravated sexual abuse. And even the sexual abuse is now being counted as sex. Not sexual abuse, but as sex. Now, does that make anybody else feel sick? Does that make any feminist in here feel sick? You're supposed to be wanting to protect these young girls from this patriarchal point of men. But because it's not a white man doing it, you don't want to fucking talk about it? Grow some fucking nuts and actually deal with this prospect. Actually deal with the circumstances that you've created. Deal with it. The incident took place near the city of Tampere in southern Paikama region in autumn 2016, so 2 years ago. The man had sexual intercourse with a girl. No, he didn't. He had fucking raped her. He fucking raped her. Who was 10 years old at the time. In the yard of a deserted apartment block. He also exchanged sexually charged messages with her. Does that mean that she was responding to them? Or does that mean that he was sending them to her and she was responding without fucking knowing what they were? And this also definitely goes to more of a point of being a grooming operation rather than it just being a case of a rape as well. Which means that he planned this. He was grooming her. This has nothing to do with cultural changes or cultural differences. This has everything to do with a predatory paedophile that wanted to rape a 10-year-old girl. That is it. So both Pikaman District Court and the appeal court in the city of Turku convicted the asylum seeker of aggravated sexual abuse and handed him a 3-year prison sentence in 2017. The courts didn't recognise the incident as rape, saying the girl wasn't forced into the sexual act or overcome by fear. The judges also ordered the man to pay the child €3,000 or $3,600 US. I just very quickly wanted to come in here and just say that the price of somebody's innocence, the price of somebody being raped is now lowered to $3,600 US. Take that into consideration for a minute. That if you were raped as a 10-year-old, that your compensation is going to be $3,600 US. Just take that into your heed. The girl themselves is not getting justice by the bloke actually having been convicted of child rape due to diversity, and mere diversity is our strength, but is actually getting let off with only sexual abuse and having an only 3-year sentence, and making sure that the court itself doesn't have to put down another rape case. But at the same time, your innocence has been taken. You have been probably dramatically scarred for the rest of your life, and yet you get paid $3,600 US for it. Welcome to the left. Welcome to the idea of diversity is our fucking strength. $3,600 for your innocence. Give me your virginity and I can tell you I can rape you. No, we just heard a little bit before this that he had her in a derelict block and in the middle of a open field in that derelict block. Yeah, she was definitely completely and utterly happy with this. She wasn't overcome by fear, and she wanted this sexual act. Let's forego this facade of trying to say that she could give consent. Let's give the idea that she could give consent, just for credence of this argument in general. Why is it that if she could give consent, that the idea of grooming is not put into place here? If you can get a kid to do something that you want to do, generally you go, "I'll do this and I'll give you this." Is that something that happened in this situation? Is this something that was going on? Was this something that this Yusuf was actually doing? Was it a case of this? Or was it a case of Yusuf Mohammed Duradin actually luring this kid to be raped in the middle of a derelict block in the middle of a green? What seems to be more likely? That the kid gave consent, or the fact that this adult actually took that consent away from them? Let's carry on. So the decision fueled fierce debates across the country. Well, I imagine it fucking should do. It really bloody should do. Tulula Tanamin, professor of child psychiatry at the University of Tampere, insisted that the child simply could not know what was going to happen, couldn't know what was happening in such a situation. And this is from a child psychologist that was actually already a part of this, that was in the country, that has everything that they want to talk about, that has everything that they know about, that is to do with their laws, and yet this psychiatrist is still coming out and saying there is no way, no how, that this child knew what was happening in a situation that was like this. But we move on, we go on further. Yes, this is still going to be the same story, but this is from a slightly different perspective with a little bit more, should we dare to say and use the word, nuance. So obviously we've already read the title before. The 10-year-old girl did not object to an adult man, so the charge was rape was rejected. No evidence of helplessness or fears, because you need to be a 10-year-old girl and could fight off a 20-year-old man, but yet that still is not considered helplessness? Okay, diversity is our strength, equality is our barriers. And as for fears, if somebody is so scared that they do not scream and they do not shout and they even block the shit out, does that mean that they were scared of what happened? Or does that mean that they actually shut down because the body was trying to protect them from what was happening? I don't know. The author was convicted of an abusive sexual exploitation of the child for 3 years in prison. In the Court of Appeal, the petitioner appealed to the second paragraph of the rape, according to which rape does not require violence. No, rape does not require violence. If you find somebody intoxicated or somebody that is too scared to say no, that does not mean that you have consent, which then goes to being rape. But yet I'm giving this case so much credence by trying to assume that the child could give consent. In this instance, and this section of the video, we will actually deal with it as a 10-year-old child. The 10-year-old child has no way of giving consent. No psychologist in westernized societies will ever say a child can give consent. It just doesn't happen. So the accusation of an aggravated rape by a 10-year-old girl fell into the Turku Court of Appeal because the evidence was insignificant to prove that the act had been committed by forcing against the will of the girl. You shouldn't have to. This is a 10-year-old girl that was having sex, apparently, with a 20-year-old man. If people can't use their common sense and realise that the 20-year-old man was grooming and intentionally enticing this girl to even accept something, even though she would never fucking understand it, it is still rape. I don't understand how this is not considered rape. Can you imagine if this was a white guy that did this? The absolute outrage and outroar that it would cause. And before anybody says it, goddamn rightly so as well, regardless of fucking race. The reason why people pick out these race and finding out about the refugees and things like that, it's because of this shit. It's because of people realizing that they're not treated the same. They're not the same in the eyes of the law. And that's the way it should be. If you come into the country, you're supposed to be treated the same as everybody else in the country. Not given a green light to go and fucking rape somebody for $3,600 fucking US dollars. Let's carry on. Otherwise I will get a little bit too irate, and that's not something that I want to do. The case caused an astonishment in March 2017 when Maletti announced the judgment. Later, many other media also discussed the subject. The events took place in a small town in the Pyongyang between September and October 2016. The district court sentenced Jusuf Mohammed Adbad, an asylum seeker who was born in 1994, to an abusive sexual exploitation of the child for 3 years in prison. Attorney General Lalina Konovinamini, sorry about that, says Adbad was in a sexual relationship with the child as opposed to the child's will. I can't believe that somebody who is supposed to be the Attorney General, as in somebody who's there dictating the laws, the understanding of it, and the interpretation of it, is actually saying, with a straight face, that a 10-year-old girl is able to have a sexual relation or relations with a 20-year-old man. That is ridiculous and should be absolutely struck off. The person that this person is should be completely and utterly struck off. Not allowed to work ever again in anything to do with interpreting laws. How can you protect young children if this is the way that you're going to interpret the law for them? According to the prosecution, among other things, a very young age of the child favoured the prosecution of gross rape. Yeah, it fucking should do. So, going down a little bit more, and unfortunately we have to get into a little bit of the actual case, but this is the reason for this. So, oral and vaginal sexual intercourse occurred in the yard of the deserted apartment building. So does that mean that it was consensual? Does it? Or does it mean that if you fucking bite me, I'm going to kill you? Or if you do anything, I'm going to go after your family? Just because that somebody did something doesn't mean that they gave full consent. They could have been coerced into this. You know, I don't know anything about anything, and the Attorney General would say that it's okay for a 10-year-old to have sex with a 20-year-old. Because, you know, feminism! Violence was not proven. It doesn't have to be proven. It's the fact that there was a 20-year-old having sex with a 10-year-old. The Rikaman, again, I'm not going to be able to say that word, stated that due to the contradiction in the child's preliminary investigation report, you mean because the child was fucking 10 years old and afterwards didn't have a fucking clue what happened? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of contradictions in the reporting, isn't there? But you know, let's blame the 10-year-old rather than the 20-year-old. The prosecutor was unable to prove that the child had sexual intercourse against her will. She's 10. She's 10. In the second paragraph, a public statement entitled wrote that Adbad did not appear to have forced a child to sexual intercourse by using violence. Doesn't have to by beating her, but can coerce her by suggesting that there will be violence, by threatening violence not necessarily to her either, by threatening violence to her family, which is generally the MO for most of these people. To not threaten violence towards children, but to their families. A 10-year-old child cannot give a valid consent to sexual intercourse because he is too young and undeveloped to understand the matter. I believe that was supposed to say she, but I read as verbatim. According to the first paragraph of rape, the rape is committed by someone who forces another sexual intercourse by using or threatening to use violence against a person. Well, if that's what it is, that law really needs to change. Really needs to change. The application of the clause has not been considered to require the victim to be physically opposed, and nor should it. According to the second moment, rape is also condemned if the act is made by exploiting the fact that another person is unable to defend themselves or to form or express their will by exploiting the other due to inflexibility, illness, disability, fear, or their helpless state. Or in other words, being a fucking 10-year-old being coerced and groomed by a 20-year-old. Prosecutor appealed only to the first paragraph, namely the use of violence. Yes, that means that they could use violence to coerce this child or scare this child into doing certain acts. That does not mean that she consented to any of those acts though, does it? Venemani, sorry about that, considered that the lack of consent specifically fulfilled the expectation of the sexual exploitation of an aggravated child. I have to agree that, remember, this is a fucking child. So, Professor was a rape. In an interview with Alamati, Professor of Criminal Law Matti Tollivan was of the opinion that a mere physical superiority could, according to legal literature, suffice to satisfy the criteria of violence. If, in such a situation, the criterion of rape is not fulfilled, then you must already think about changing the law, Tollivan said. And I have to completely not agree. If you honestly think that a 10-year-old would accept to have sex with anybody, regardless of age, is absolutely acceptable, and you're still going to charge a person with sexual abuse anyway, then that just means that you're trying to circumnavigate the charge of rape so it doesn't appear as a statistic and a news story nationally and eventually internationally to condemn more of the integration and diversity is our strength shit, doesn't it? Also, in the preliminary work of the law, it is stated that the consent of the author is of age. The consent must understand the meaning of consent, which, yeah, 10-year-old can't fucking do that, can it? And this is a professor of criminal fucking law saying this. This is not me saying this. This is a professor of fucking criminal law that is out there. In a queue, it was called to another movement. In his appeal to the Turku Court of Appeal, the prosecutor increasingly applied to the first paragraph of rape. However, the complainant, that is, the victim's representatives, appealed both to the first and to the second movements, meaning that all of the definition of what they classify as rape is being used in the defendant's defense, and yet is still chucked out and not classified as rape. Suggests that there's something going on here, doesn't it? Attorney Lisa Tavaneni was of the opinion that Adbad used the fact that she was unable to defend herself or to form or express her will in the situation due to the state of fear or of helpless condition. As in, I don't know what the fuck is going on and a 20-year-old man is trying to get me to do something and threatening to hurt my family. Yeah, I think that counts as a state of fear or helplessness, doesn't it? Court of Appeal come into the same position as a district court and did not condemn Adbad of rape. Well, that's fucking amazing, isn't it? That a 20-year-old can get away with having sex in the eyes of this court, regardless of how many outside professionals that are to do with criminology law studies and professor of law and psychologist will come out to say that this is rape. But yet the Court of Appeal has come up to say that no, this wasn't rape. It was also a case of appeal, which was not sufficient to prove that the girl had allegedly been in a state of rest or other helpless condition. It was a 20-year-old trying to force himself upon a 10-year-old. No matter how much equality you think is there, feminists, this is not consent. And to think so is ludicrous. Court of Appeal upheld the district court's judgment in which Jusuf Mohammed Adbad was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for an abusive sexual exploitation of the child. So if it was an abusive sexual exploitation of a child, isn't that basically saying that it's rape but without putting a label of rape onto it? Because that's what I would have thought. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below about that. If you saw somebody that had a case above them that was imprisonment for an abusive sexual exploitation of a child, would you classify that as rape, or would you think it is rape by just other definitions of words? Hello there, I just really quickly wanted to add to this that the main reasons why I did this story wasn't because that I wanted to go against Asian men or because I wanted to go against all this. It's because in the eyes of the law, people should be treated equal regardless of race, regardless of creed, regardless of your refugee status. If you come into a country, you should be expected to adhere to the laws of said country. If I go to Afghanistan, I have to go and expect that the laws that govern in Afghanistan have to apply to me, and not the laws of England apply to me in Afghanistan. It's as simple as that. So when people come into different countries and they say, right, well, we're going to do this and I'm going to rape a 10-year-old, for instance, and then it comes to a case of them not getting done for rape, even though it's a 20-year-old man raping a 10-year-old girl, I can see that case from Finland transmuting to Europe and then coming to the United Kingdom. Now, you have to remember that us in England have had the rape gangs that have been going around. A couple of the biggest are Rotherham and Newcastle. Now, Newcastle had Operation Sanctuary involved at the beginning of last year, or just ended, should I say. And in there they found over 500 to 700 girls that were affected by this. That was over a 10-year period. Now, in that period, they found that they were people that are actually sex slaves, girls that were actually being trafficked across the whole of the country. They also found that there was multiple dens, that all of these girls were so dependent on drugs and alcohol that even if they wanted to quit, they couldn't because they were dependent on their oppressors. But yet, nobody wants to talk about all those type of issues because there's a race involved and there's a possibility of refugee status or deportation. And the thing is that we should be talking about this regardless of it. Our children are more important than what our moral standings are on immigration. Surely. Whether it be white children, Pakistani children, or even children of fucking aliens or dogs, they should be more important than the idea of our moral standings on whether or not somebody that's come into the country should be treated differently or the same. I think we're under all of the same opinions that they should be treated the same in the eyes of the law, surely. So if one person gets arrested for burglary, regardless of race, should be completely and utterly treated exactly the same. Now, if they have other aspects behind them, as in other criminal activities that are behind them, then they're going to be looked at differently. But what I mean is directly in correlation of race, not by previous experiences. There is a difference. So I just wanted to put that to the actual chat. I did actually want to put that to everybody that watches this video as much as possible. Please let me know, do you think that this is a bait and switch tact by this Finnish government and Finnish court system to actually change what the definition of rape is in the eyes of their court system, so that they can say no, it's sexual abuse of a child. Because I think that is something that would be very bad for the whole of Europe in general, but I can also see it being used as a tactic to try and quell the rape statistics that are going on massively at this moment in time. So let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know what you think in general. You know where to reach me. Reach me on Twitter, reach me on Facebook. If you like what I've done today, don't forget to reach me on Patreon. Thank you very much, guys. I'd like to speak to you all again real soon. See you again. Bye-bye for now.